Today we're gonna go over my video settings on the Canon R7. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Alex. I'm one half of the Young's Photo and Film with my wife Veronica. We are a photo video company that specializes in luxury weddings and events. So when it comes to shooting weddings, my primary cameras are the Canon C70, but I also have the Canon R7 that I use quite a bit. This one usually lives on my gimbal, but I will also grab it if I want something that's small and lightweight without lugging around the C70. Thankfully, with all of the Canon mirrorless line, they give you a lot of customized options, including what you can set the different buttons and dials to, and that's what we're gonna talk about today. So let's get into it. So if you go into your menus on your R7 and go over to the custom function setting, which is the orange tab, and scroll over to page 3, you'll see a customized buttons option. Click on that, and then you'll see a list of custom options for photo and custom options for video. We're gonna focus on the video one, but it's important to note that for video, it doesn't allow you to customize the shutter button or the record button, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So let's start with the M function button. On my C70s, I have a control ring adapter for my EF lenses, and that's what I'll set to white balance, but because of the R7 not having a control ring adapter, and also not having RF lenses that have a control ring adapter, I like to use that button for white balance, because I almost never use auto white balance. The ISO button, I just leave as ISO so I can adjust that on the fly when necessary. However, most of the time, I'll leave it at the native 800 ISO. For the autofocus button on the back, I'd have that for turning the servo function on and off. The autofocus on these cameras is great. So I typically leave the autofocus tracking on face priority and just leave it on the whole time. But it doesn't always work during things like the processional. In those situations, I want to toggle off the servo feature so that I can focus myself. The star button, I leave as my punch in. So if I'm focusing, I'll use that to punch in to make sure I'm getting a really crisp focus. The rest of the buttons I pretty much leave alone. So if we go out of there and then we go down to the custom dials setting, here's what I set my dials to. The top dial that's up by the shutter, I like to use for shutter speed. Typically, I'll have an ND filter on the front of the lens, but that's not always the case. So as much as people might frown upon this, I will crank my shutter speed if I have to in order to get the right exposure. Next, the rear wheel on the camera, I have set to my aperture. The next setting is for control ring, and since I don't have a control ring adapter or any control ring lenses, I just leave that alone. Now let's talk about that shutter button I've mentioned a couple times. If you go over to your main video menu, page 6, you'll see an option that says shutter button functions for movies. Now that is where you can adjust what that shutter button does. You can set it for the half press and the full press. So for half press, I have it as the servo autofocus, but when you turn the servo off, it just becomes your focus. So for the full press, the only option is to either have it turned off or to start and stop your recording. I have it turned off because the start and stop recording button is very close to that, and I also don't want to accidentally start or stop recording when I'm trying to focus using that same button. So like I said, Canon makes it very easy to customize these cameras, so I just wanted to dive into what dial and button functions I have set on ours to make it as easy to shoot video as possible. If you have any questions, be sure to put them in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you don't, and I'll see you next time.